Hi honey bunnies, I've had a lot of questions since I kind of came onto YouTube and started writing the blog and all of that about how to path work with tarot, what the best methods are and what exactly path working even means. When you're path working with tarot, you're actually going into a much deeper exploration of the card, a far more complex and visceral exploration, where you kind of mindscape, you kind of move your mind into the world beyond the barriers of the border of that card. You actually go into that world and you inhabit that world for a time. And the desire with path working is either to bond yourself more closely with the underlying themes of the card itself, or in fact, if you are very practiced at tarot and that's not necessarily your intention would instead to bond yourself with the themes of the card in terms of using the attributes and strengths symbolising the card to meet your own needs in the outer world or in your inner exploration. So it's quite deep work, and it can glean some very rich rewards. One thing I would say about path working is quite often what people would describe as somewhere between a guided meditation and astral projection. In a sense, you're using the same qualities you would need, like mindfulness and stillness and concentration, and your will, your intent, your desire, to get somewhere deeper and to actually explore more fully. So if you're practiced at meditation, or you're practiced at getting yourself into a state where you actually can go into astral projection, you won't actually find path working that difficult to do. If you are really daunted and overwhelmed by the idea of path working, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, I'm not sure if this is for me, I'm not sure if I can actually project myself into that world and actually release the kind of ego constraints of the imagination to the extent where I can really get something from the experience, then I would suggest that you instead try and implement meditation into your spiritual practice, into your daily life for a few weeks, so you can get used to the kind of concentration and stillness that is kind of required in order to get into the meditative state, because at first it can be very difficult. When I first started meditating, it didn't come easy, it didn't come naturally to me, but I really feel that the fact that I'm so practiced now at meditation, and it's something that I slip into easily, means that practices like path working and mindscaping and so on, when they come along, it's easier for me to actually sustain the level of focus needed, or it's easy for me not to get so distracted and actually to go into that world and allow that world to absorb me. So it really depends how practiced you are at other things of this nature, I think. And if you feel like you're ready to start path working, there's some advice that I would posit to you. First of all, when I do path working with tarot cards, I like to get myself into the ritual mindset first. And so I often actually draw out a circle. I actually enter into sacred space, not because I'm necessarily raising energy. I'm not raising energy, I'm not doing a magical working. So maybe you would think, well, why do you need to step into sacred space? But the reason that I would give is that ritual mindset actually helps me a lot to get the level of intensity that I want, and therefore to actually glean the kind of results that I want. So I think ritual mindset works really well with path working, especially if you've got a little bit of that dweller on the threshold vibe, where you're thinking, is this really going to work? Can I really do this? Is there a point to this? I'm not really sure, where it's going to go. If you're having that kind of self-talk, which is kind of holding you back and making you feel a bit like you're standing on the corner of your comfort zone but not quite sure about heading into the new terrain, then I would definitely advise getting into the ritual mindset. There are other ways that you can get into the ritual mindset. One thing I might advise is the night before you do a path working with a tarot card, you could separate your chosen tarot card from the rest of the deck and place it into the stream of moonlight by the window if you want to, or light a candle and place it on your altar, place it into some kind of space where you feel that it's significant, it's been set apart, and you are planning for the work that you're going to be doing with it the next day. And this can often bring on some quite interesting dreams as well, when that's the last thought of the night, that you're kind of thinking to yourself, okay, tomorrow I'm going to path work with this card. That can really bring on some extremely interesting dreams. The dreamscape kind of opens you up to those initial thoughts and explorations, because you've gone to bed thinking about that path working that you're going to do. So yeah, separating the card might be a good one. Cleansing the energy and casting a circle, obviously. The use of candles and crystals and incense and all that good stuff can kind of make you, it fills the path working with that sense of importance and that sense of intention, and you can select incense and candles and crystals in association with what you're really trying to get out of the experience and what it really means for you. So yeah, entering into the ritual mindset, I would say. And the next thing I'd suggest you do if you're just starting out with path working with tarot is you need to think about the border of the card as the doorway. So at the moment, looking at the card, you can only see that little segment of the world that is open to you through that doorway. And what you're looking to do when you're path working is you're looking to go forward, to zoom into the world and to actually step through that doorway. So you're using the border of the card as the doorway into that world. And that's really what you need to consider. Now, you can do this with your eyes open or your eyes closed. I would suggest, if you're fairly new at the practice, that you start with your eyes open and just kind of allow yourself to do exactly what you would do with scrying, whereby you kind of go into a trance. You're not necessarily focusing on any one thing, or you're focusing so intently that it almost feels like non-focus, if you see what I mean. If you've done any kind of scrying, you'll probably understand what I mean by this. Keeping your eyes open and just basically allowing yourself to go into a trance, to zone out, to absolutely immerse yourself in those colours and that situation and those figures. And if you're quite practiced at visualization techniques and path working, and you feel like you would prefer to go into this with your eyes closed, then just take a snapshot of the image, get it in mind, and then close your eyes and actually see the white border, or whatever colour the border of your cards are in your deck. Actually see that border and view it as the doorway, and actually start to move slowly towards it. So really, eyes open or eyes closed is kind of down to personal preference, and if you'd like, you can try both. But really, we're just thinking about getting beyond that open doorway. That's what we're really doing. We're stepping into the world. We're being able to look around the corners, and we're also being able to connect with the figures, talk to the figures if we want to, go walking on the mountains in the distance, see what's beyond them. You know, we're really giving ourselves that chance to explore the terrain and see it as a real place. What else would I say? Before you go into a path working with tarot, you can go into the path working with a very specific intention, or you can go in there with just the desire to explore and be open to that exploration without having any specific intention. Again, this would depend on the reason for doing the path working, I think. If you are doing path working through the desire to actually get yourself more closely bonded with the deck and actually connect to the imagery much more and understand the deeper underlying themes, then I would say that it's very useful to go into path working with a completely open mind, not really thinking too much about what you want to achieve when you're in that space, but actually just to allow the images and these symbols and the things that happen to come to you and to absorb them openly. If, however, you're path working in some sense to promote personal development or spiritual evolution, whereby you're looking at the energies of the card and you're thinking about what those energies mean to you, and you're thinking about how you actually want to bring those energies into your life and to understand them more competently and more profoundly, then I would suggest it might be good to go into path working with some kind of intention, some kind of plan, some kind of specific action that you're going to carry out when you're actually in that path working. For example, you might think about a very pertinent question that you want to ask one of the figures in the card. That would be a good one. You might think about maybe that if there's a house in the tarot card, for example, you might decide that your plan is to go into that house and see what's there. You might decide, well, you could decide any number of things. I don't want to go on and on about what you may or may not decide, but if you see what I mean, you can set that specific intention, and you can go into the path working with the desire to actually do that. And your intention will be based really on your understanding of symbolism in tarot. So, for example, you could think with the Strength card about what exactly the lion represents to you, and you know, in symbolic language, what does it mean to you? What is it saying to you? What is it about the lion that you're afraid of or that you're attracted to? And then you may decide that in the path working, you want to go into the card and you want to learn from the maiden how to tame the lion, or maybe you want to kind of move the maiden aside and tame the lion yourself, you know, this kind of thing. So you're really thinking about breaking down the symbolism in each card and working out how you can use it to help you evolve and help you push forward on your own journey. I would suggest that, you know, when you're going into a path working, whether you're going into it with the strictest intentionality and an absolute set idea of what you want to do, or whether you're going into it quite openly, the idea is just to let go of control. So really, the imagination can take you to some very weird and wonderful places, and sometimes you might be tempted, if your imagination does something quite far out when you're in the path working, you might be tempted to actually stop and almost observe your imagination doing that, rather than actually staying in it and being part of it. Your imagination can sometimes surprise you, especially if you're not adept at things like astral projection and you're not really used to the notion of actually unfettering your imagination completely from ego control. So going to those parts of the imagination that are completely out of bounds of your control. For example, daydreaming. Daydreaming is a kind of imaginative functionality that we have a hell of a lot of control over. We allow ourselves to kind of go off and, you know, we imagine certain things, and, you know, sometimes they do get a little surprising, but most of the time they're within our control. We daydream about things we enjoy, we daydream about fantasies that we'd like to have happen and stuff like that. Whereas when we move on into the astral, we're really looking at the unfettered imagination, that source imagination, which is actually untrapped and unfettered by ego. It's not within our control. And sometimes in path working, these aspects of the imaginative faculty can come up, and it might be quite tempting for you to kind of stop and think, oh my God, why am I thinking that? Or why is that happening? Or where did that come from? What does that mean? But it's very important to stay with the path working, just relax into it, let go of control, because the most important thing to remember about path working is that when you come back from a tarot path working, when you enter back out through that door, which is the border of the card, you are going to have all of these symbols and all of these signs and all of these synchronistic little messages, which you're going to then be able to analyse and interpret and untangle. So for the moment when you're in the path working, don't worry about it, let go, relinquish control, and just let it happen. And then afterwards, when you do your write-up of the path working, you're going to have all of these signs, symbols, synchronicities to explore. So it's very important to not discredit anything that happens. In fact, I was telling a client recently that once when I path worked with the strength card, the lion tried to attack me. But it's really important not to discredit these things. They're all symbolism, and they can all tell you something interesting about yourself or about the energy of the card you're working with, about your relationship to the energies in that card and how to bring them into your life, or how to connect with them, or how to resonate with them. So it's important not to discredit anything. And one final thing that I would say is that many people talk about the value of leaving by the door that you came from. We talk about this in astral projection too, that normally we have some kind of way in, we use some kind of symbol or sigil or sign, or we see a bridge, which is always the same bridge we use, and there's a guide or a kind of an animus or anima on that bridge who leads us in. And often astral projection practitioners will say that it's important to leave by the route that you came into. The same could be true of path working, could be said of path working with tarot, and it is something that I have seen people say, is that you should leave by the door that you came in from. So if you get very deeply into the path working, which is what I truly hope for you, and I hope you're able to get there, if you get very deeply into it, always remember to go back through the door that you came from. It'll be very easy to locate. It'll be much the same way as you would be able to locate your own home after you'd had a couple of drinks. You know, it's going to be slightly like, okay, where am I? Where do I need to get back to? But it's certainly not going to be impossible. It's going to be, you'll feel maybe mildly disorientated, but you'll be able to get back to the door. So, you know, if that is something that you feel is important to you, or you feel when you're in the path working it's important to get back out through this door, then you'll just be making a mental note of it and going back through it. So that's something to consider too. There are, I suppose, deeper contemplations when it comes to path working, and, you know, if there are any questions that people have as a result of this video, if there's anything that you don't feel I've covered in a basic sense, please do let me know, and I will try to oblige you. And good luck with your path workings. Let me know how it goes. Let each other know how it goes. It's a really beautiful part of the tarot journey, and it's a beautiful way to use tarot for spiritual exploration and emotional growth and all of that good jazzy stuff. So yeah, enjoy it. Enjoy the journey. Much love.